guys, and welcome back. Episode 13 of the Next Season podcast. And of course, it is that time of year. We've got a fresh start. It's a new year. We're setting goals. Many of us are setting New Year's resolutions. And if you know me, you know I'm a huge proponent and believer in the importance of goal setting. It's why I had the ambition pillar, and the way that I talk about goal setting and all of that is critical for growth. We must have a target and a vision for what we want, so we're not just coasting through life. But the truth is, most of us absolutely suck at setting goals and achieving goals, myself included. And don't even get me started on New Year's resolutions. Those are different, but we really suck at them. My objectives for this episode is to change this a bit for you. I'm going to give you some facts about how bad we really are at setting and achieving goals. I'm going to give you a science-supported framework to try to make it better, and then identify 3 things that you are probably doing that you think are helping your goal pursuit, but are actually making it harder. If you've ever done any research on goal setting, you know that there's no shortage of articles and resources and frameworks and methods. Why? And while I believe it's true that some people prefer some methods over others, and there's not really a blanket solution for everyone, I think what it comes down to is there's so many methods and articles because most people really struggle finding any that actually work for them. And so you actually, you need to do the work, right? And no method's going to work unless you put in the work. But the problem with most of these frameworks and tools and methods and the articles and all the books is that most of them don't align to the way our brains work and actually tap into the internal mechanisms that foster motivation and drive and align to your ambitions and kind of create pathways for your growth. There are some that do. There's some great books. There's some great articles. I'm probably going to reference those in the next couple episodes, but by and large, a lot of these don't really align. So you got to do the work, but you also got to make sure that you're doing the right things. And so I wanted to do this episode now because it's front of mind for so many people. And of course, the baseball players, we're in the middle of the off season, and it's a great time to work on goals for the upcoming season that we have and to start ingraining those habits. So to start, I'm going to dive into some ugly numbers and stats, and then I'm going to give you my methodology. I've developed this framework based upon a bunch of research and studies and articles and work that I've done with adults in the professional setting. And it's a framework that's aligned to the ways that our brain works and builds an identity around who we want to be as part of that goal pursuit. So we're going to do that. We're going to lay out some stats. We're going to talk about the framework, and then I'm going to lay out some common mistakes that I think you might be making and what to do instead. So a while back, I worked with a younger baseball team, and I was talking to the players and the coaches about setting goals that they had for the coming season. And there were some great high-level targets. This is an organization, so multiple age levels. And they were talking about preparing players for high school and college. That was one of the big goals. They want to make sure they had players that were ready for high school and then ultimately ready for college. They talked about winning tournaments. They talked about retention of players, so players keep coming back into the organization. Talk about securing some scholarships for players. So the players they had in the organization, they had certain ones that they wanted to make sure they got scholarships or opportunities to play in college. So there are some really good goals. And then we shifted a little bit into the individual goals. And one of the coaches shared a conversation he had with his son who plays on one of the teams. And the boys, his son's goals were clear. He wanted to hit his first home run and he wanted to pitch a shutout. Those were his 2 goals. So tangible, motivating goals, right? But I looked at it and I saw room for growth. And so I asked the coach, how do we enhance these goals? Are these the right goals to be setting? And he was a little bit confused. And so we unpacked a little bit and we went a little bit deeper. And what I explained was these are outcome-based goals, or what I call do goals. They're focused on results that often are beyond that young man's control. And so what we did is we worked together to kind of reframe these and turn them into process-based goals, or B goals. So they went from outcome-based goals or do goals to process-based goals or B goals that they center around actions and identity. So instead of aiming to hit a home run, the focus became improving swing mechanics and increasing hard hit percentages. Instead of pitching a shutout, we prioritized hitting spots. We prioritized first pitch strikes. We prioritized daily practice habits. Those B goals built the confidence and the focus and the control and the mechanics and naturally aligned to the big picture outcomes. And here's why this matters. Outcomes like a shutout or a home run rely on things that you can't control. Like that pitcher could do everything lights out in a game, but a couple bad hops or a missed play, and all of a sudden that shutout's gone. And so if his success is tied solely to the results, that player is going to feel defeated despite doing everything right. You cannot control outcomes. You can control your actions. You can control your attitude. You can control your preparation. You can focus on what's within your grasp, and it increases the likelihood that the results are going to follow. It doesn't guarantee it, but it increases the likelihood. I was talking to a retired player once about his journey and goals, and he said, Kevin, goals are never the end result. It's not about making it to the bigs. It's not about hitting a bunch of home runs, and he did. It's not about even winning playoff games. Goals are about who you become in the process of that pursuit. That process is identifying and integrating and practicing the actions, the behaviors, the attitudes, the words of that created player that you want to become. So I want to get into some stats and figures a little bit. Now, here's a simple truth. Most goals fail. In fact, the vast majority of people don't even set goals, and even fewer stick to them. There's one study that I found in preparation for this conversation. And again, this is one study, and I'm sure that there are plenty of others with different data, but only 20%, according to this study, only 20% of people set goals. And of those 20% who set goals, only 30% actually achieve them. So what that means is about 6% of people actually set goals and accomplish them. To go even further and to illustrate the importance of the 7-step framework I'm going to share with you shortly, one of the reasons that people don't achieve their goals is because they don't write them down. Not all goals are created equal. So just simply saying, I want to be a pro baseball player is almost never going to be enough. Writing goals down, though, is a game changer. And when you write down a goal, you're activating key parts or key areas of your brain, such as the reticular activating system, or RAS, which helps you prioritize what matters, and the hippocampus, which strengthens memory, and the motor cortex that links movement with thought. So you're linking now the biomechanics, the body part with the cognitive, with the brain. Writing down goals literally is rewiring your brain to focus and take action. And yet almost no one does this. Fewer than 3% of Americans, according to one study, write down their goals, and less than 1% review or update them daily. This is why we're so bad at this. So whether you're thinking about your goals or New Year's resolutions, I want you to think about one of the first things you can do is get into the habit of writing down your goals. It's not just symbolic. It's actually a real step towards making them real. And that's just goals. So I want to lay out a little bit of New Year's resolutions too, because that's a cluster. We're just really bad at this. And it's that time of the year, so I got to point it out. But there's a 2016 study, and of the 41% of Americans who make New Year's resolutions, by the end of the year, only 9% feel that they were successful in keeping them. There's an earlier study from 2007 that showed that 12% of people, so the 2016 study was 9%. There was a study from 2007 that showed that 12% of people who set resolutions were successful, even though 52% of those people, the participants in the study, were confident that they would be successful when they set them. That's a mess. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why these New Year's resolutions fail at such a high clip. And a lot of it is the same as just general goal setting. They're unrealistic. They're not keeping track of their progress. They're not writing them down. They're forgetting what those goals are. The progress is too slow, so they get frustrated and give up, or they try to make too many resolutions or set too many goals. So there's a whole bunch of reasons that go on. But now that you know how awful we really are with setting goals, what do we do instead? Well, one of the most common frameworks for goal settings is something you've probably seen, and it's SMART goals. And there's some different ways and different terms used in SMART goals. I like to use specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. That's what I like to use. You might also see attainable instead of action-oriented. I like to use action-oriented because I think it makes it clear that you must include the actions that you're going to take when you set the goals. And I think there's too much similarity between attainable and realistic, but we're getting into nuance. SMART goals is a very accepted, kind of well-known framework. Use whatever version you like. What I want to do in this conversation is to give you a framework that takes that typical SMART goal framework to the next level by tapping into some specific brain functions and preferences, such as neuroplasticity and dopamine pathways, that are going to help you stay motivated and disciplined in both creating and then sticking to your goals. I want to start by making this very clear. This process that I'm going to lay out for you is going to probably feel big. I don't want it to overwhelm you. I want you to start small. I want you to pick one or two tools, one or two of these steps that you can integrate quickly and then build from there. Each of these steps can be standalone if you prefer it that way. For many of you, if you try to do all 7 of these at once, it's going to be too overwhelming and you're probably going to give up. The key of all of this is consistency, not perfection. Now, if you are somebody who can take all of this and you're already goal-oriented, you already practice goal setting, you feel like you've got a good rhythm and you just want to take a whole bunch of these or all 7 of these, go for it. But just understand that you can do each of these standalone, okay? So we've got SMART goals. What we're going to do is add on to that. I'm going to give you 7 steps that you can apply to take your SMART goals to the next level. The first step is I want you to choose one hyper SMART goal. So you've got your SMART goals, okay? We need to get hyper SMART with one goal. Why? Neuroscience tells us that the brain's prefrontal cortex, which handles focus and problem solving, is limited in capacity. So if somebody tells you you can't multitask, you can. It is possible to multitask. But a lot of times multitask, we think, becomes 3, 4, 5 tasks. We're trying to do too much. It's really, the threshold is really about 2 or 3. 3 is stretching. So 2 is kind of the multitask we're thinking about. It's probably 2. Any more than that, we're really limiting our ability to stay focused and to be able to execute. Priority is a singular word. Priorities is a made-up word. There can only be one. This doesn't mean that you necessarily need to set aside other obligations or practices or habits or routines or any other vital aspects of your life or your health or your work or your relationships or anything else. You need to create space, though, which we're going to talk about next. And just understand, if you have multiple goals or multiple objectives that you're trying to take on right now, that you're trying to pull in and say, I want to start these 3 habits towards these goals, these 3 goals, I'm going to challenge you to pick one. Okay, multitasking, again, divides your attention, which results in poor outcomes across the board. So choose one and then build upon it from there. So an example of a hyper SMART goal for a baseball player. So instead of saying, I want to improve my batting, very non-specific, not measurable, you're not talking about the actions, you're not talking about the time frames. We need to refine that. So a smarter goal would be, by the end of the season, I will increase my batting average by 50 points by dedicating 20 minutes of daily time to swing analysis, to studying pitchers, to doing T work, to live BP, plus visualizing 10 minutes every day. So now we've got actions associated with, we've got time frames, it's precise, it's tied to measurable behaviors, and we can measure at the end. That's a smarter goal. In addition, when we frame goals this way, it taps into our intrinsic motivation, our generative drive, and that's going to make a huge difference as you continue to go through it. You really want to think about why the goal matters to you personally. So to accomplish this first step of creating a hyper SMART goal, I want you to answer a few questions. And maybe it's just one of these, but you can ask yourself, what things have been on my to-do list? What things have been on my mind every day for a while? When those thoughts keep coming back to you, they're important to you. What's going to bring the most value, right, to yourself, to your team? Who or what or where do I want to be in 1 or 3 or 5 years? Okay, I don't want you to think too far ahead, but I want you to think about kind of big picture, long term, 1 or 3 or 5 years. Where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish? And what are the actions and habits they're going to take to get you there? So to answer those questions, that'll help you establish a hyper SMART goal. The second step is to name 2 actions or habits or people that you're going to eliminate or reduce from your life in order to clear space for your goal. Success in any pursuit is not just about what you do, it's about what you stop doing. Achieving a goal often requires clearing space in your routine or your schedule or even your lifestyle. So I want you to identify 2 things, or maybe they're people, that you can cut at least temporarily. One place that you could start is digital distractions. So social media, we know, is a major drain on focus and mental energy. I'm not saying that you need to cut yourself off from the world, but what I'm saying is figure out how you can put a limit on it so that you're not creating those distractions. Studies from Harvard University show that interruptions that we get from notifications, so if our phone going off, if somebody sends us a text or or an app sends us a notification, they can slash your productivity by 40%. So every time that you check your phone or every time your phone goes off during training, during game study, during film study, during practice, during classroom study, you're choosing instant gratification over that long-term progress. So I challenge you to create a distraction-free zone. You want to silence your notifications. You want to put on do not disturb. Leave your phone in another room. There's apps that you can use. I'm not going to personally recommend them because I don't want to use apps on my phone to create distance on my phone. I just like to be able to set it aside, but figure out what works for you. And then another thing you can look at is negative influences, whether it's toxic people or maybe it's internal. Maybe it's internal to you, it's self-doubt, it's negative habits like procrastination. Whatever those negative influences are, identify them and figure out how you can create friction or separate yourself from those. When it comes to people, I want you to think carefully about the relationships that are not serving you. If there are people that add more stress to you than value, you may not need them in your life. It doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be forever, but it's just not for now. And the reason this is important is because neuroscience tells us that mirror neurons, things in your brain, cause your brain to mimic the energy of those people around you, the environment around you. So if you're surrounded by people who complain, or maybe they're lazy or just overall negative, their mindset can drag you down. So instead, you want to make sure that you align yourself with people who are positive, who are driven, who are focused on growth. What I want you to do in order to complete this step is I want you to answer these questions. What am I doing and who is in my life that is not serving me? And what can I remove to clear space for what's most important? I want you to identify two things. The third step in this process is I want you to identify 3 benefits that you're going to receive or feel or attain from the achievement of, or even the pursuit of your goal. So I want you to think about, why are you pursuing this goal? The answer to this question matters more than you might think. What you're doing is you're creating emotional resonance. It's deeply connecting to the why behind your goal. And that's going to be the fuel that keeps you going when motivation wanes, when distractions come in, and if you're just not feeling it on a day. Emotional resonance, emotional connection is really, really important. The best storytellers, the best marketers, leaders in any realm understand this. Emotions drive action. A compelling story or an emotionally driven pitch works because it activates emotions in the audience and it makes the message stick. It makes it memorable and inspires people to act. And the same principle applies to your goals. Emotional engagement sparks learning. It sparks habit formation. When you vividly imagine the benefits of achieving your goal and thinking about how does that feel? What is it going to mean to you? Where are you going to be? What are you going to have? What literal feelings are you going to have from that? You're activating the brain's reward system. And that reward system includes things like dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter tied to motivation and action. It creates a feedback loop. So you take steps towards your goal. You feel good about the progress. It motivates you to keep going. But it's not just dopamine that's at work here. Emotional connection and emotional arousal also boosts neuroplasticity through norepinephrine or noradrenaline. It's the same thing. And that is the precursor to epinephrine or adrenaline, which is preparing your brain to adapt and to form new habits. So essentially your emotions create this fertile ground for growth by strengthening connection between your actions and the outcomes that you want, that you desire. So I want you to write down specific benefits of achieving your goal, not some vague aspirations, but I want you to be very, very clear about the measurable rewards and feelings you're going to get. So to help with this, there's a couple things that might come to mind about what these benefits are. It could be, if you've got a goal of improving batting average and you're improving your ability to hit and your impact you have on a team, obviously an increase of batting average or on-base percentage is going to increase your confidence. So every time you step in the box, you're going to feel that difference. You're going to have a psychological edge. It's not just a feeling. It's actually, it's a performance enhancer. And so that self-efficacy, to believe in yourself to succeed, directly impacts your outcomes. Another benefit that you could get from improving your batting could be opportunity. Those improved stats could mean a better lineup placement. Maybe it's rank recognition from scouts, or it could mean a scholarship. It could mean For the pro players, maybe you get better contracts, right? So obvious stuff of improving that performance. Obviously, when you elevate your game, when you're performing better, your team is likely going to be doing better. So there's a whole bunch of benefits to think about, and you want to get very specific as you write this down. So my challenge to you is to answer this question. When I successfully reach the end of my pursuit, I'm going to feel, I'm going to be what? Identify 3 things that you're going to feel or receive or attain from the achievement of, or even just the pursuit of your goal. The next step is I need you to specify 4 actions that you're going to take consistently in the pursuit of your goal. Action is the lifeblood of goal achievement. It's that bridge between intention and reality. It's what turns daydreamers into bulldogs. You cannot achieve goals without action. And in fact, this is arguably the most important part of goal setting and goal pursuit. Experts in goal setting have observed, because they've interviewed and they've written about top performers across countless industries and professions, and almost every one of those top performers are going to say that once you set a goal, the real goal becomes the consistent pursuit of the process over the end outcome. There's a message that you'll hear in the business world, and I've heard it used by people in the military as well. It says, you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. In the book Atomic Habits, James Clear tweaks that a little bit. And what he says is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. It's your system, those habits, those actions that you take every day that turn your dreams into tangible results. It's not enough to plan. You actually have to take action. You have to start. You have to execute. There's another great business leader and author named Seth Godin, and he says the only thing worse than starting something and failing is not starting something. Action cures everything. The top performers understand that success is not momentary bursts of brilliance and motivation. It is the relentless pursuit of a process. Actions compound over time, and it's that daily effort that's going to make all the difference for you. I want you to close your eyes for a second. I want you to think about days when you've been completely satisfied at the end of the day. I can almost assure you that these are not days that you laid around and did nothing. The days that you're truly satisfied are the ones where at the end of the day, you lay your head down at night and you're absolutely exhausted, but you know that you gave it everything you had and you left nothing in the tank. That's the importance of action. What's true in life is also true in baseball. The difference between good and great players is their commitment to their system. It's the commitment to their process. A baseball player striving for improvement doesn't rely on inspiration and motivation to strike, and they don't need to be forced into it. They don't need to be told what to do. They create momentum with their actions. The professional does not wait for inspiration. He acts in anticipation of inspiration. He doesn't wait to become a pro to do the work of a pro. He does the work of a pro years in advance with no guarantee that he's going to ever come close, but he does it anyway. At the end of the day, it is action that creates results. So to complete step 4, you need to answer this question. To achieve this goal, each day I will do what? Pick 4 actions and get after it. The 5th step in this process is I need you to identify 3 obstacles, 3 challenges that you think could get in your way, and identify the steps that you're going to take to overcome them. Life's going to throw you curveballs. Some are going to be predictable, things you see coming, and others are not. So there could be injuries, there could be relationship issues, there could be mental slumps, there could be physical slumps. There's going to be a number of challenges that could arise. The key is to prepare for those obstacles, not by creating rigid plans, but by equipping yourself with the mindset and the tools to adapt when things don't go as expected. When you identify those potential challenges, you're reducing the risk or the chances of being blindsided by them. So by anticipating those disruptions, and maybe it's just as simple as, I think something could be a challenge, be an obstacle, not even identifying necessarily what it is. The more specific you can get, the better. But sometimes just acknowledging something's going to come up. And when that happens, I'm going to be able to respond. And what this is doing is going to allow you to simply apply the preparation that you have in place instead of just giving up on a goal when an obstacle comes up. And so here's how to get started with this. I want you to think about 3 likely obstacles that could arise in the pursuit of your goals. So for example, it might be you get injured and you're temporarily sidelined. It might be a social or relationship conflict that creates a distraction and it has an impact on your mood. It could be a performance slump. It could be a batting slump. It could be a case of the yips, something that might shake your confidence. Those are obstacles that could come up in the pursuit of your goal. And then for each of those obstacles, I want you to write down how you're going to respond. So if an injury occurs, for example, maybe you focus on recovery. Maybe you're able to focus on training and developing other parts of your body that are not impacted by the injury. Maybe if it's a social or relationship conflict that creates distractions, maybe it's creating boundaries and routines that help you stay centered. If it's a performance issue and performance obstacle and your confidence starts to go south, maybe you lean into seeking feedback or revisiting past successes, a whole bunch of things. We'll talk about performance even more, obviously, but there's a whole bunch of things you can do. And so I want you to think about is these things could come up, and if and when they do, here's what I'm going to do instead. Here's how I'm going to overcome that. And what I want to talk about is a distinction between planning and preparation. Planning assumes control over all of the variables, and that's not realistic. Preparation builds strength and focus and resilience to respond no matter what the circumstances are. And what we're talking about in this step is preparation. It's acknowledging that some obstacles and challenges are going to arise. You're preparing for them, but not planning. And when we go into over planning and become too rigid in those plans, it is probably going to do more harm than good. Preparation is not about controlling every outcome. It's about being adaptable and proactive. When you anticipate the challenges and you commit to overcoming them, they become stepping stones instead of roadblocks. So to complete this step, I want you to answer this question. When this happens, I will do what? And I want you to identify what this is and what you're going to do about it. Step 6. I want you to detail 2 negative impacts or negative effects of you not starting the pursuit of your goal or failing to stay consistent in the pursuit of your goal. Again, I'm not talking about outcomes here. I'm talking about not starting your goal and not staying consistent with your goal. Intrinsic motivation and focusing on the positive outcomes of achieving your goals are powerful tools. That's what we established as step 3 of this framework. Thinking about who you're going to be, what you're going to feel. That's a very, very important step. And there's going to be moments when those benefits are not motivating enough for you to drive action. And it's during those times, science supports another effective approach, and that's visualizing the negative consequences of not taking action or not pursuing your goal. Human beings are wired to avoid pain and negative outcomes. And when we imagine the consequences of failure or inaction, it's activating the brain's emotional centers like the amygdala, which heightens our awareness and our urgency to act. And that emotional response can create a surge of focus and determination to steer clear of the negative results. So I've talked a ton in previous episodes about how elevated stress and trending into that sympathetic nervous system can hinder performance. And that's still true, especially when we go chronic with that sympathetic nervous system. But stress is of course, very, very positive, and it's essential. And the sympathetic nervous system and the drive towards survival and action in key moments can be great for sustaining movement and momentum. So what you do here is you're visualizing failure. You're visualizing what that feels like if you don't take action or you don't stay consistent. And the brain will treat these scenarios as potential threats, making us more likely to prioritize action to avoid them. So while focusing on the positive outcomes should remain the core of your motivation strategy, identifying and emotionally connecting with the negative impacts can serve as a powerful tool as well. For example, if you fail to achieve your goals or pursue your goals, you might have senses of regret. You might have feelings of guilt, frustration. I want you to feel that. I want you to know what that's like. I want you to spend a moment imagining those negative outcomes as vividly as possible. Let those emotions sink in and then channel that energy into action. Think about it this way. While positive visualization, step 3, imagining what that feels like to achieve the goals, that builds excitement. Negative visualization builds urgency. Positive visualization builds excitement. Negative visualization builds urgency. And when you combine them together, they create a balanced and resilient approach to the goal pursuit. So to complete this step, I want you to answer this question. If I don't achieve or pursue my goal, I will not have, I will feel, I will be, I will have instead. Answer that question or answer it as many ways as you can to identify those things that you want to avoid, which will help you stay consistent in the pursuit of your goal. The last step in this process is I want you to create one reward system that you're going to employ throughout your goal pursuit. Establishing a reward system is critical to stay motivated and engaged in the pursuit of your goal. But here's the key. It's got to be meaningful. You've got to be disciplined with it. And it's got to be strategically designed to keep you on track without derailing your progress. Research in neuroscience highlights the effectiveness of something called intermittent random rewards. And what this is they're small and unpredictable rewards or treats that reinforce persistence and engagement. And they trigger a controlled release of dopamine, providing a motivational boost without overstimulating and disrupting your baseline focus. So you're not going overboard with rewards that derail your progress and throw off your baseline dopamine. And it's the randomness of this. So it's intermittent random rewards, and the randomness of this introduces novelty. And that's a very powerful driver in goal pursuit. Novelty is newness. And what that does, it activates the brain's reward system by sparking curiosity and interest. This keeps your motivation alive. It helps you avoid the monotony that can drain focus and persistence over time. And when you introduce something new, it can be a small reward, it could be a change in your routine. Your brain gets a dopamine boost tied to that curiosity and learning. There's a few big benefits of novelty in everything, but I want to talk specifically about intermittent random rewards. So a few big benefits of this are motivation, right? Novel experiences reignite excitement. It keeps your goals from feeling stale and mundane. It activates focus. So when something feels fresh or new, your brain and your body naturally becomes more engaged in that. So it helps you increase your focus. It can sharpen your attention, make you feel more present and intentional in your actions. Novelty can also activate creativity and problem solving. So it stimulates neural connections, which can help you think more flexibly and creatively when those challenges arise. Now we're talking about the challenges again. When those things come up, you can problem solve those. You can overcome those with creative solutions. And it also increases enjoyment. So rewarding yourself with variety makes your journey toward your goal feel more enjoyable. It increases the likelihood of long-term adherence because you're getting rewards along the way. While celebrating your ultimate goal is essential, the behaviors and the consistent efforts along the way deserve recognition too. And this is why you don't just wait until the end to reward yourself, but you have these intermittent random rewards throughout the process of the pursuit. When you reward actions and behaviors, you're reinforcing the habits that lead to success. So I want you to pick time checkpoints along the way. I want you to find ways to reward the effort and the consistency, not just the results. If you're confused about how to ensure randomness, if you're doing this on your own, for example, one thing you can do is you can set a schedule where you maybe flip a coin. And if it's heads, you give yourself that reward you've identified, and tails you don't. So now it's truly random. And that method creates an exciting what if factor that keeps you engaged while ensuring that rewards remain balanced and not excessive. Random doesn't mean frequent. Okay, you need to stay disciplined with this. Rewards should never become indulgent, too much or too often, and those rewards lose their effectiveness, they lose their novelty, and they can potentially derail you from your progress. So it's important to stay disciplined. You want to treat these rewards as tools to reinforce your effort, not reasons to slack off. Allow that and enable that unpredictability and the uniqueness of your system to work in your favor while maintaining balance and focus. So to do this effectively, I want you to answer these questions. I really enjoy what? And if I can do or have that thing occasionally, it's really special to me. Or another question to ask is at the end of this pursuit, something that would mean the world to me would be what? These are meaningful, random rewards to you. They don't necessarily have to be food driven or anything else. They can be experiential, but it's got to be something that has meaning for you, and figure out how you can do that along the way. So that's your 7-step framework. I want you to choose one hyper smart goal. I want you to name 2 habits or things or people or whatever it is that you're going to eliminate. I want you to identify 3 benefits you're going to receive if you achieve the goal or the pursuit of your goal. I want you to specify 4 actions that you're going to take consistently in the pursuit of your goal. I want you to identify 3 obstacles that you think could get in your way and steps you're going to take to overcome them. I want you to identify 2 negative effects or negative impacts of you either not starting your goal or failing to stay consistent with your goal. And then I want you to identify 1 reward system, the intermittent random reward system that you're going to employ. That's your framework. And yes, this seems like a lot of work, but guess what? That's what it takes. With all of that being said, I want to close this out with 3 things that many people do, I bet that you do, that are actually getting in the way of your goal pursuit despite you thinking they might help. The first is something called the middle problem. And most people get really fired up at the beginning of a goal and at the end of a goal. When you start a goal, that initial dopamine surge is going to give you a natural high. It's going to make everything feel possible. And as you get closer to the end of the goal, you see that finish line and you think, I'm almost there. I can increase my pace a little bit. But in the middle, that middle part is tough. And that's where a lot of people will quit. Reality sets in, dopamine drops, frustration builds, many people give up. That middle slump is normal, but it's very dangerous if you don't address it. And a lot of people will think that at that point, it's not for me. And that's a top mistake that you need to avoid. Figure out how you're going to break through that. So acknowledge that it's normal to lose momentum in those middle stages. I want you to break those large goals into smaller milestones. So it's really important to have those milestone goals in that middle section, and then use time chunking. Even break that middle phase, that middle section, into even more manageable segments with their own clear objectives. And this structure is going to help you stay engaged and maintain focus during the toughest part of that journey. That's the first mistake that people make, is giving up in that middle. The second mistake that people make is they tell the world. It may feel natural to announce your goals to friends and family members or post them on social media. And you might think that that's building accountability, but you're probably wrong. And when you share that goal prematurely, saying, this is what I'm going to do, the positive feedback that you're likely to receive is going to give you a dopamine hit. It's premature satisfaction. And your brain is getting that dopamine. And when your brain interprets that as progress, even though you haven't done the work, the illusion of accomplishment reduces your motivation to actually pursue the goal. Reward without effort disrupts your baseline dopamine levels and diminishes your drive. So what to do instead? I challenge you, do not share publicly what your goal is. Keep your goal private until you've made meaningful progress. I want you to focus on execution, not applause. Celebrate milestones with others after you've achieved them. And this is going to keep your internal motivation intact, and it's going to make the eventual celebration even sweeter. If you do need to tell somebody, because you do believe in accountability partners, and I get that, I think it's important, make it one person. A person that you completely trust, who's going to give you positive support as well as the honest truth and hold you accountable. Ideally, this is somebody who is on the same journey with you or on their own ambitious journey as well. So if you do need to tell somebody, have one person that you trust that's going to tell you the truth and be accountable with you. Do not tell the world. The third mistake that people make is the Post-it note fallacy. And we've all done this. We write down a motivational quote on a whiteboard or post it on a fridge, or, we've got our sticky notes here and we keep it somewhere visible. Maybe it's a vision board. I'm not against these. They work for many people, but for many of us, it works for a day or two or a short period of time. And then you stop noticing it altogether. And here's why. Your brain is wired to pay attention to new stimuli, to new things, to newness. Repeated exposure to a sticky note or a vision board makes that stimulus blend into the background. And what's even worse is when you do notice it, you might rationalize, well, I haven't done this yet and I'm still fine. And that's going to devalue the goal or weaken your resolve in pursuit of that goal. I understand the irony of my earlier point about writing down your goals. And one of the keys here to do this effectively is not that you have to avoid writing them down. That's not what I'm saying, but you want to make sure that you're revisiting them and updating them. That's bringing in the novelty. Writing them down and putting them in a different spot from where you don't see them as often. And then every once in a while, I'm going to go revisit that. I'm going to pull it back out and see it. When we have those goals in front of us, we become blind to them. And eventually it devalues the significance of that goal. So that's a lot. To recap everything we just said, we're pretty bad at goal setting. We talked about why. I gave you a 7-step framework to apply. Break that into chunks. Don't try to take all of that at once unless you are ready for it. And if you do try it and it's not working, scale back, slow down, break that into chunks, and identify 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 of those steps that you can apply, and then just build upon it over time. Avoid the common mistakes. Avoid giving up in that middle phase. Avoid telling the world, and avoid writing down your goals that you see all the time. What's the takeaway? Success isn't about just setting goals. It's about the system that you build to achieve your goal. Systems create habits, and habits shape your identity. So instead of focusing solely on the finish line, ask yourself, what is the best version of me? The creative player version. What does that person do daily? And then design your system to align those habits and behaviors. It is systems over goals. I want you to focus on what and who you become over what is the outcome. We'll see you next time.